Hi, and welcome to the OT is In, the podcast where we merge the worlds of education and occupational therapy to empower families like yours. I'm Sarah Collins, your host, an occupational therapist and a homeschooling parent. I've experienced occupational therapy by supporting families for over 15 years, but also through seeking out support of my own children, so I'm right here in the trenches with you. Though there is not one way to educate your child, there is a lot to consider when individualizing an education. And the goal of this podcast is to explain some of the why behind what an occupational therapist is thinking so you can apply it to your own family. Especially with my three favorite topics: executive functioning, handwriting, and sensory processing. Each episode will be packed with practical tips, expert interviews, and real-life stories aimed at helping you to create a supportive learning environment for your child. So, grab your headphones and get ready to dive in of the collision of education and occupational therapy. I'm Sarah Collins from Homeschool OT, and I'm thrilled to have you with me on this journey of discovery. Hey, and welcome to episode 50, part 1, and going to be part 2 of the OT is In podcast. Now, if you guys are here watching on YouTube, you can see this absolutely ridiculous party hat that I literally dug out of our sideboard in my dining room. Who knows how long it's been in there? But that's okay. We're here to celebrate today. I cannot believe that we've made it 50 episodes. And I have you to thank for being a part of this incredible journey. Oh, I have a pom-pom too. Pom-pom that came from my son's hockey team. So we're just bringing it all out today. Your support and your questions and your stories are what make this podcast a space where we can learn and grow and navigate the world of occupational therapy and homeschooling together. And today, in addition to answering your questions with my ridiculous party hat that I'm probably going to take off, I have some exciting news to share with you. Over the past few years, I've had the privilege of working with so many families, helping you to create learning environments that truly support your child's sensory, executive functioning, and motor needs. I've done this through classes, done this through the OT is In membership. I've done this through the podcast, but I know that sometimes a podcast episode just isn't enough. You need this personalized support to implement these strategies in real life. And within the membership community that we had, what I heard from people was that they needed more one-on-one support. So here we are. I am rolling out something extra special with options for everyone. I'm calling it the new Concierge OT coaching services. So whether you're looking for one-on-one support or more community, or, the classes, they're all there. I am now offering, so number 1, the classes. These are on sensory processing, executive functioning, and handwriting, so that you can have the in-depth learning on that specific topic. There's also number 2, individual coaching. This is customized strategies that are, direct access to me to troubleshoot challenges, to build confidence in supporting your child's needs. This is through a Q&A where I will meet with you and we can ask and answer for 30 minutes. You can purchase these in monthly, bi-monthly, or quarterly packages. There's also group coaching. If you want to grab a group of parents, maybe your co-op for a Q&A together, or if your child is struggling in an environment where there are different leaders, coaches, tutors, everyone can gather in one room with me and we'll work on the resources and recommendations to support your child. Finally, number 4, for the most in-depth, there's a private consultation where we really dig deep into your homeschool through an hour-long call and a nice written follow-up with resources and recommendations. So, if you've ever thought, I wish I had someone to walk me through this is your chance. And I am so excited to be a part of your team. If you want to learn more, head to homeschoolot.com/services to explore these options. And of course, if you have any questions, you can always send me a message. So now, let's dive into today's special episode 50 and then 50 part 2, where I'll be answering your most pressing questions about homeschooling, OT strategies, parenting, and more. Hey, and welcome back to the OT is in. My name is Sarah Collins, and we are going to continue with our Q&A from episode 50. We got a bunch of questions, and I wanted to keep going. So this is episode 50, part 2, or episode 51. You will notice I no longer have my party hat on. Do still have a pom-pom here if we need to celebrate every once in a while, but we are going to go on and answer some more of your questions. Question number 4 was, do you have any advice on helping your child to navigate participation in groups designed for neurotypical children? For example, Sunday school, sports, and summer camps, apart from being at their side or running the group myself. I'm going to veer for a second here, and then I promise that it will come back. Okay. Now, I personally, I'm an educator, but I do not educate within the school system. I'm an occupational therapist, but I don't work within the medical system. I'm a sports mom, but I am 100% not for being on the best teams and spending all of our every waking moment to excel, excel, excel. I'm a suburban mom, but I literally have baby chickens sitting in my office right here. The point being that I don't quite fit in any common spaces or any of these categories that we frequently hear people talk about, right? I'm confusing to people. So yes, I am neurotypical, but I still don't fit into many of the categories that makes other people comfortable. And this carries over to my kids. So they're educated, but not in a familiar way to people. They're athletes, but especially when they're playing for the school, they're not there all day, every day. So for both my neurotypical daughter and my neurodivergent son, it takes bravery to continually show up. It takes bravery for me to continue to show up in many spaces. Now, the reason that all of us are able to do this is because we have strong roots and an identity that comes from our family and from our faith. So, in her book, A Place to Belong, Amber Johnston says, the voices of our culture try to overwrite their family stories, leaving them lost and isolated. If our children are to weather the cacophonous onslaught, they must be able to hear a strong, beautiful, harmonious voice singing the song of who they really are, who they belong to, and what story they are telling. So I think you even asking this question, you are clearly giving your child the story that they do belong and that they have a desire, if they have a desire to join these groups, that you're going to support them. So with that being said, I also want to touch also on the double empathy problem. Okay, so this is an idea that communication gap between neurodivergent and neurotypical individuals goes both ways. Hear me there, both ways. It's not just about our neurodivergent children learning to adapt to the world, but also about the world learning to better understand and support our children. Not all the expectation should be on your child to look or to act neurotypical. Sometimes we need to reframe our expectations and advocate for the environments that embrace differences. Now, I told you I would veer and I would come back. I had to lay a foundation of where homeschool OT stands on some things so that you would be able to now understand some of these practical tips. So, one idea would be to talk to the leaders in advance, communicate your child's needs ahead of time, help group leaders to understand what helps your child to succeed. And this also can be the best ways for them to communicate with your child and or the best ways for your child to communicate. If you are using AAC, trial, practice, show how you model it so that people are more comfortable understanding your child, and make sure that we put some of the onus on these leaders. At home, you can role play some situations. You could practice scenarios, build familiarity, and build confidence. You can use those same social stories that I talked about back in episode 50. So check back to that episode if you're unfamiliar with what I'm talking about there. I also think that these groups can focus on your children's strengths. Now, there's a lot of ways that people make good friends, proximity being one, absolutely. Common interest is another. So see what groups that it is that your child would like to participate in. Is it a Minecraft group? Is it a coding? Is it soccer? What is it that is pulling on their strengths? And then see ways that they can contribute meaningfully. And this can be some out of the box thinking, being a helper, setting up chairs, leading a warm up stretch before we get started. Now think, these are all also activities that are using deep pressure or proprioception. They're really active. That helps to calm our nervous system so that then we can participate. So how could they maybe start that at the beginning? Now, another option is to make sure that we give them the time to take breaks. So remember, this bravery takes stamina, right? And there are limits to how much that we can serve in one night or how long that we can hold this bravery. So encourage them to step away when they need to regulate and work up on building stamina over time, or allow them to participate for the short amount of time that they are desiring. Listen to that communication, accept it, and move forward. There are so many ways that we can work on perseverance, but typically in the group setting is not one of them. Also, make sure that you're affirming your kid. So after each session, talk about what they did well. What did they enjoy? Also talk about what other people did well, what other people enjoyed. Then you can also mention, where do they perhaps need to grow? Where do others need to grow? And how could you help to encourage them? Now, finally, provide a language. And this is language about themselves to advocate. And this also can vary based on the comfort level of your child. It can be anything from, hey, I'm Sarah and I'm new here. I'm Sarah and I'm comfortable. Or I'm Sarah and I'm uncomfortable. It can also be explaining how their brain works in certain scenarios. Now, for example, I did get permission for this story, but my son is a 13-year-old hockey player and he's the captain of his team. His brain also works differently than many of the other players on his team. He has rituals that help him to be prepared for a game, but when he's off the ice, his mind often wanders for short glimpses. It takes a lot of endurance for him to cognitively focus on an entire game. This year, some of his teammates called him out. They didn't get it. They thought he was unfocused. They were angry. Some so angry that they literally tried to fight him. Now, I don't think I've ever been more proud of him than when he walked away from that, when he stood his ground, spoke truth, and walked away. His body was shaking, but he did not react in the moment. Instead, we spent a week coming up with his language, and he talked to his team at the beginning of the next practice. Now, what he said is part of his story, and I'm not really going to share that here, but the point being, this has taken years for him to really understand his brain and to be able to communicate it to others. This is the beginning of advocacy, which will be a lifelong journey stemming from the bravery and roots that we were talking about before. You know, my close personal friends often joke that homeschoolers don't make decisions in February. It's too cold, too dark, too dreary. Any change feels like a risk that we will regret. But let's be real, sometimes February is exactly when we need a change. I remember February of 2018 like it was yesterday. My daughter, a fifth grader at the time, looked at me after yet another frustrating math lesson and said, "We just can't do math together." She might have said a little more rudely, but we're just going to keep it at that. And she was right. Our brains just weren't meshing, and math had turned into tears for both of us. And that's when we made the switch to CTC Math, an open and go online program that changed everything. CTC Math offers video tutorials that are short, clear, and easy to follow. They're perfect for kids who need concepts explained in a way that really clicks. Plus, with their flexible pacing and interactive practice, it's great for families juggling different ages and different learning needs. And what's more, parents get detailed progress reports so that you always know how your child is doing without hovering over their shoulder. Since 2018, CTC Math has been a game changer for our family, and it might just be the change that your family needs too. So head to ctcmath.com to learn more and to start a free trial. And let's make math one less thing to stress about. All right, so your question number 5, how do I support my autistic child with severe FOMO or fear of missing out? All right, I actually want to reframe this a little bit because it might actually help you to give grace that you can't meet these needs every time. So fear of missing out is actually a hardship in prioritization and contentment. Now, I'm not going to tell you to focus on your child's strengths because, to be honest with you, kiddos who really struggle with contentment and prioritization often are really good at flexible thinking, right? They're going to come up with lots of other ways that they can get to do something. They're also going to come up with lots of different ways to get started with something like task initiation, especially when joining a group. We do want to build on those, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. But we also need to be teaching the skill of prioritization, which is an executive functioning skill, which means that it's going to be developing well into their 20s. Now, there is something that we call teenage magic, meaning that these executive functioning skills, there's typically a growth period around the age of 11 and 12. This is also when we typically add more responsibility to our children. So we want to make sure that our expectations match what their abilities are. And here in this situation, our expectations of being able to prioritize and choose to stay home or choose, or even recognize that we can't do it all, that expectation is not where your child's needs are at this moment. So this prioritization, which affects the ability to decide what to do first, second, and third in big projects and daily workday, and clearly now for your family. So what do we do about it? Number one, we're going to acknowledge these feelings, right? We want to validate their desire to be a part of everything. We also want to help them to understand that it's okay to miss things sometimes. And this also is modeling that same advocacy that we were talking about in the previous question. We want to carry over that advocacy into the future. Recognize that when you are teaching this, you're also likely advocating for yourself, because we can't be everywhere, and saying yes is also saying no to something else. For example, if you're saying yes to going to XYZ event, you're going to the, I don't know, pick and choose something. You're going to the trampoline park for a birthday party, right? That is also saying no to time together at home as a family. Use that language as well. I am not saying no to you going to this party. I am saying no to leaving family time out right now, which probably means that you need to create some rituals or small, meaningful things at home so that missing out is balanced with positive experiences. You can also use some visual calendars or social stories like we talked about in the previous episode, but this can help your child to see when their next exciting event is so that they can look forward to what is next. I think reading books together about your family goals and why and how you make decisions about what activities to participate in is a really fun way to do it. Now, when I was little and when my kids were little, we read The Berenstain Bears and Too Much Pressure. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can see how old this book is. We're talking circa 1985, I believe, but yet it does have a sticker on it that says it's brand new. It was very loved. And what I absolutely remember about this book is how everyone being busy really affected Mama. And we talked about this with our family as well. She was the one that at the end just really broke down and then had to lead the conversation with her family about how to prioritize and to decide what they were going to participate in as a family. Now, she led that conversation, but she did listen to everybody else's feelings and ideas as well. And last year as a family, we read the book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, which is by John Mark Comer. Now, this one is a faith-based book, but much of it discusses the questions to ask yourself and your family to decide what activities to do. Now, some other ideas to help you to develop prioritization away from just discussing it. So here's a game you could do with something called Pick Your Priorities Challenge. So how this works, each morning give your child a list of tasks or subjects. I would say mix schoolwork in with chores, also fun activities like do an obstacle course or something like that. And have them rank the tasks by importance and by urgency, and then have them explain their reasoning and set it going first, second, and third, but follow that throughout the day. And then see how they did. Reflect with them. Did their order work well? Would they change anything? And why is this fun? Kids love having control over their day, and this gives them that control while also helping to teach prioritization. Another idea could be a big project breakdown. So if you picked a fun long-term project like making a lap book or building a diorama, putting on a play, now this is like a bigger deal, right? And then work together to break it into smaller steps and have your child decide what to do first, second, third, so on, and talk through each of these steps and how some probably depend on other people. Like, for example, if you're putting on a play, you need to figure out when other people can come and to be into your skit. Now, we just did this with my 9-year-old. He was completing a lap book on All About Me. And he decided one day he's going to cut everything out. One day he was going to answer all of the questions. And the third day he was going to decorate it. Now, see, he couldn't decorate without cutting everything out on the first day. So we got to talk about why was he making these choices. Now, this task was fairly easy for him. The All About Me part was easy for him, the writing the people's names in his family, some characteristics about himself, because that wasn't the main goal. The main goal was the prioritization and completing from start to finish this big project over several days. And he really enjoyed it. And why is this also fun? Big creative projects give kids ownership, and they naturally see how prioritization matters. Another option, something called Beat the Clock or a time management game, because we also need to know how long something takes. You can't manage your time wisely or prioritize what's going to need to happen first, second, or third if you don't know how long something typically takes. So you can give 3 to 5 tasks. It could be like something school related. It could be a chore. It could be, think about, all right, we're going to sweep the steps today. How long do you think that's going to take? 2 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever. And set the timer and see how long it actually takes. Now, this isn't so that we can race to get done the fastest, because we want things to be thorough, but we do need to know how long that a task is going to take before you can add a bunch of them together and see how accurate you are. So pick some really fun ones, things like doing 10 jumping jacks and then mix in a chore that you want them to do, and then do something else, and then 3 somersaults. Your children, I'm picking things that my kids would like. But so pick, how long are these things going to take? Then put it all together and say, let's see if we are accurate. The goal is not to beat the clock. The goal is to see how accurate that you are. So again, it brings in that prioritization. Might you want to do what is easiest or quickest or most important first? Or does your body need to move before you're able to do those things, right? So that you're more efficient. Kids love that challenge aspect as well. And it's great for visualizing how long tasks take, which also brings back in the executive functioning skill of prioritization and time management. Now that we've talked about developing these executive functioning skills in moments when your child is regulated, their body's calm, it's also important to acknowledge that FOMO, or the fear of missing out, can actually be a legitimate fear. Okay. Our kids' nervous systems can be causing reactions such as sweating, feeling hot, tension in the muscles, fast breathing, wanting to run away, things like that. These are reactions that we do not want to ignore or to discount. So in the moment, all of these conversations and activities probably aren't going to help. We want to be doing those at a separate time building up to this. In this moment, calming the body and brain are more important. There are terrific resources that I will link in the show notes, some tips and tricks, as well as the anxiety toolkit from one of our favorites, Colleen Kessler, who's a frequent guest on our show. I've done lots of podcasts together, both here and on her podcast called Lifelong Learners. That toolkit has 96 different games and techniques that can help to calm the brain and the body. And things that even, it comes with a little key ring. You can keep it in your purse. I used to do this for my middle son when I was younger, have it ready and at the go. Now, these are also things that I suggest that you practice when the body is calm, so that in the moment when you're modeling them, it won't be a foreign concept. These can be things like deep breathing, tensing the muscles in a specific rhythm, punching a pillow, blowing bubbles, crawling is a really good one. So practice these at different times so that in the moment you are ready to pull them out right away. You guys, I am so grateful that you've been with me for 50 episodes. And this is episode 50, part 2. It is truly an honor to be a part of your team. So remember, the opportunities with Homeschool OT don't stop here. There are now 3 different ways that you can work with me through classes and coaching and consultations. And if you're unsure of which one of those to do, you can also just book a little 15-minute slot and be like, hey, help me figure this out, Collins. And I'm right there with you. So visit homeschoolot.com/services to find out more about that. And again, I'm so grateful that you're here.